Today's episode is sponsored by Shove Coffee. Shove is a small coffee roasting company based out of Indianapolis, Indiana, with a primary focus on prioritizing people across the supply chain to create a more accessible, cooperative, and equitable coffee industry. You can check them out on Instagram under the name Shove Coffee. That's SHUVCOFFEE, or visiting their website, shovecoffee.com, for more info. That's SHUVCOFFEE.com. Hello, and welcome to Everything Remade, a podcast that I hope is about growth as much as it is about music. I'm Edie Quinn, and we have a great show lined up for you today. Before we get started, though, I'd like to remind you about our Patreon page at patreon.com/humanmachine. Supporting the show there gets you access to zines, music sneak peeks, and all kinds of other fun stuff. That's patreon.com/humanmachine. And now, I'd like to play something for you. You're hearing Deleted by Detach the Islands, which is the brainchild of my new pal, Emmett Ceglia. The song comes from their newest album, A Highly Magnified History, which you can find on the Tomb Tree Records Bandcamp page.
I can remember a moment very clearly that's not tied to a particular band or like piece of music, but I remember going to the Berklee College of Music 1 week percussion camp. It was like Berklee was taken over by drummers, basically, I think all in high school. And I went to this thing and I was starting to get more committed toward music, and I was still, I was just going into my junior year, and I was very torn between what am I going to do with myself, and is this music thing happening? I was devoted to music, but also devoted to studying and a lot of other things. And I remember coming home, and I think I had about a month left of summer before I was going to go back to school. And I was laying in my bed all alone. Nothing was going on. No one was around. I was looking out of my window. It was this clear summer day, and it was like someone flicked a switch on in my mind that I think maybe just that moment of stillness, that uninterrupted, kind of like when you're in the shower, there's nothing else going on. There's no other intrusive thoughts or sounds or anything. It just like hit me like a ton of bricks, like a flash of light had gone off inside me, and I knew that this is what I was supposed to be doing with myself. And I think it had been building slowly over time as I got more and more into drums, and I was listening to more and more intense music. And I remember listening to American Idiot and just having like this, I don't want to say an epiphany, but there was a corner that was turned. I was suddenly listening to music like relentlessly. I was keeping CDs in my Walkman just uninterrupted over and over and over. And I had a CD player in my bedroom too, and I would just kind of shut myself up in there, open CDs and look through lyrics and like sing along and devote myself to learning things. And I was bands like Coheed and Cambria, Dillinger Escape Plan, Slipknot, Green Day. I was just wholly like devoting myself to learning about music and listening and playing. So I think that moment I had, that like epiphany of self-realization, all that was building up to it, maybe without me noticing, maybe without me like going, yeah, I'm working toward this thing. And
Yeah.
it was all just kind of cooking in the background. And then all of a sudden, there it was. And it became so clear.
Yeah. You said you were at the drum workshop at the college, and so like I'm assuming you were in like the marching band or whatever equivalent at school at that time. How long had you been doing that?
So I've been playing the drums since I was 9. I was in grade school playing in like the orchestra type band, right? And then when I was 12, I started playing the actual drum set and taking lessons. And then when I was in high school, I was able to join the jazz band and be in the orchestra all at the same time. And so I was in like as many music things as I could get my hands on. Not only because those were like easy A's.
Okay, because I was gonna say, like, what was the appeal before you like knew you wanted to play in a rock band, for lack of better words, you know? But it's like, okay, number one, it's an easy A, and number two,
it was like when you're really good at running track and you're like, well, I'm good at this, and I feel like I'm having a good time with it, and I should stick with it. I should keep pursuing it. And then it quickly turned into like, wait, I love this. I come home every day from school and do this until the cows come home, or until someone tells me dinner's ready, or that I have to do homework or whatever. And then it became, well, I was seeing bands I loved on tour and like learning that existed. And I was like, all I want to do is just be in a band with my friends and have like a house with all of them and be in like a band. And that's what I really want to do. And then, it's funny. Like, I don't have a very specific memory of when that became it, but it felt like all of a sudden I was playing in a band in high school with friends, and we were just rehearsing a lot. Like, it didn't really go anywhere. We played some shows, but we never recorded anything. And then, the prospect of going to school for music became a reality. And I think that's when it really became super serious for me.
yeah, because like as a kid, you can just be sort of like you said, like you're like, hey, it seems like I'm pretty good at this, and then like there can be instances of like, you kind of, you don't know like what it is exactly you like about it, but you're like, this positive reinforcement like feels good, you know? And especially if you're not getting that like in a lot of other places. I'm not putting that on your situation. I'm just saying like that's like sometimes like a thing where it's just like, like this is connecting me to a part of myself that like either by friends or whatever, like I'm being encouraged like for the first time, like
I was meeting tons of really nice, like amazing people, and I was making lots of friends, whether it was like in the band I was playing in, the shows I was playing, the orchestras I was playing in at school, the jazz band, the New York, like there's something called NISMA, which is like a music competition circuit that you can get into as a young person, and there's levels of that. And so I would see people there, and there was like a competitive orchestra that I got into, and then there was a whole group of people I was now friends with. And then so I was playing sports too at the time in what would be like middle school, and by the time I got to high school was, I was having to make some tough decisions. Like, am I going to keep playing sports? Am I going to really do music? I was in an Air Force program at the time too, called Civil Air Patrol, that I was getting very heavily involved in. And I was kind of like, something's got to give. And I loved sports, but I didn't want to dedicate 6 to 7 days of my week every single week with no vacation to that. I was like, man, I could be in Civil Air Patrol and playing a lot of music if I just didn't do this. So I think I'm going to go with music and this other thing. And like devote myself to that. And then, like you said, there's a lot of encouragement, and then there was something like innate about it that I couldn't put my finger on, but I knew I needed to do. It was like a calling that I didn't know the language of, but I just kept getting closer and closer. And I kept thinking, I guess the closer I get to this, the more I'm going to understand what this is all about. And then before I knew it, I couldn't stop doing it. And then it became what I wanted to do with my life. It helped a lot that I had my dad was a musician as well. He was also a drummer. And so there's drums all over the place in the house, and the basement was full of drums. And so I had the ability to really stretch out and like try things and just be able to be holed up in that kind of world, playing along to music or having lessons at home, and have a home environment that was amicable to that, and parents that would tolerate and deal with that. I was very lucky to be able to have that as like the formative foundational years of playing and becoming like obsessed with music.
Yeah. When you were talking about like sports and making decisions, I couldn't help but recall a time when my dad had said something like, yeah, you're gonna have to stop skateboarding now that you play guitar. And I was like, why would I have to do that? And he's basically like, because you're gonna hurt yourself, and then you're not gonna be able to play guitar, and then you're gonna be like miserable. And I'm just like, yeah, that'll never happen. And
Whoa.
I never broke anything or anything, but I just like sprained a wrist and couldn't play guitar for like a month, or maybe it was even less than that, right? But like,
but it felt like eternity.
Yeah, it was like, oh my god, and I was like, oh, I fucking hate how right that was. That like I would have to, and I didn't. I never skated the same way. I mean, I would still skate sometimes, but I never skated the same way after that. It was just like I was no longer fearless whatsoever. Like I was like, nah, I'll try whatever I know I can already do, but I'm not going downstairs. I'm not doing this stuff. I'm not like doing big rails. I'm not, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Until eventually I hardly skated at all. Yeah.
Oh, I was like obsessed with the X Games and playing like Tony Hawk Pro Skater on PS2 and stuff, and always dreamed of skating or doing BMX or something.
Yeah.
But my center of gravity is like in my shoulders.
Well, what were you playing then? Like football or?
I was playing basketball, baseball, some soccer.
Yeah.
But I didn't, it's not like I didn't skate because I was playing sports. I was afraid of hurting myself and not being able to play music.
Yeah.
I was like, at the time I was just afraid to not play, but hearing you talk about that experience and your dad stepping in and saying, think about this a little bit. Thinking about it now as an adult, it's like, well, how am I supposed to bare my soul if I'm trying to like, if my wrists are all messed up, like,
yeah,
what's going to mean more to me?
Yeah. The only other thing that happened after that, like, was I turned an ankle real good.
Ugh.
And that was sort of like, I thought I was already like taking it easy and being careful. And then I turned an ankle real good, and I was like, that could have been my wrist again.
Right.
And so I never did like ramps or anything after that. I was just like, nah. And
it makes
yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I don't, it's I still have a skateboard, and like my kids will get it out and mess around, and they'll be like, can you do anything? And I'll like get on it, and I'm like older now, and so I'm like even more worried because like I don't, you will notice like at some point like in your life, like this is just like a general, not like you, but just a general
The royal you.
The royal you, anyone listening, you will notice at a certain point in your life that you just start healing a lot slower. Like,
Yeah.
like I get like a good gash on my leg or something, and it just doesn't, like, I'm just not, it's not gone in like 4 days like it used to be, So,
Totally.
when I get out there, I just, my kids are trying to do whatever, and they're like, "Can you do anything?" And I'm like, I'll do a little kick flip. I'll do like an ollie or something, but I'm not, yeah. One time I like, they were like, we used to live on a really busy road, and when I was teaching them to ride bikes, I had to take them to a bank parking lot that like closed, like the bank would be closed. So I'd take them down to this bank parking lot and teach them how to ride bikes down there in the parking lot.
Sick.
And there was a thing there, and it was like basically one step. And like I had the skateboard, and they were like,
do it.
Yeah. And I was like, I can do one step. And I like ollied down this like one step, and like they thought I was the greatest skateboarder ever for like, a month or something. So that was like, yeah, it's probably like, how like when you're little and you think something's cool and you build it up in your brain, like that was like, 5 or 6 years ago at this point. So like in their minds, it might be like 4 or 5 steps by now.
Right. That's biblical.
So, yeah. So as long as I never take them to that parking lot again, it's cool. Like
that's so sick. The legend will live. You'll never know.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it is, it does come to that point where you start like, where you realize like, hey, this is such a big thing to me, and you start weighing your other life decisions like based on music and stuff.
Yeah.
But
yeah, you put it at the center of your universe, and much like your sun and your solar system, things are gravitate toward it and revolve around it, and they're shaped by it, and it becomes like this thing that's almost bigger than you, and yet it is you. Not to get so woo woo about it, but it's a very like powerful spiritual thing when you're devoted like that to a craft or an artistic pursuit. You just like, it's an extension of you.
Yeah,
it's a part of you that's outside of your body.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not trying to call you out, but obviously you haven't listened to very many episodes of this podcast, because we go way more woo-woo than that, like quite often. Like, I don't think that there's another thing out there that is as magical as the idea that you could just take nonsensical sounds that are in your brain and turn them into something that people can hold on a cassette tape in their hands like across the world and listen to. Like, I can't imagine anything that's more like, it's so metaphysical, like in this like way that I'll never comprehend it. And it's funny too, because sometimes you're literally just like, oh, I'm gonna write some songs today, and you have nothing in your brain, and you just sit down, and the next thing you have songs, and it's like, I don't, so it's like, it can be the most like, these ideas were sent down by ravens from the gods on Olympus, or you can just sit down and it's like, oh, there's that. Like, it can be either thing, no thing, right. And it's just, I don't know, like.
No, I'm 100% on board with you. It is the closest thing to magic I've ever experienced.
It's like,
and being able.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. Just you were talking about being connected to people all over the globe. People I've never even met, I've written notes to and put them in cassettes and sent them there. And just, if anyone's got a Detached Islands cassette or anything, I can't thank you enough. I don't think I can express what it means to have what you described as nonsensical sounds
Yeah.
be smashed together. But it's so true. It's like, how did anyone ever get a hold of this besides, me and my friends who I'm lucky enough to have gotten over to play this insane music, and like other people are enjoying it, and I've never even met them, and I don't know if I'll ever get to even play it for them. And it's just like, I can barely fit it into my mind. Yeah. And I'm just like humbled by that more, I think, as much as anything else.
Yeah. And the other thing about it too is, right, as much as we understand that it's like this magic that almost controls us more than we control it, like we spend the rest of our time like trying to demystify it, right? Like we're like, I'm going to get this pedal and this pedal does this. Like we know like we can control that. And we're like, oh, we're over here with our little drum tuners, tuning our drums and making our drums sound a certain way, like we're in control, Like
it makes me think of the like machine learning, where they can tell you how it starts and how it ends, but what goes on in the middle is kind of unknowable. Right. It's like, I started with these chords or this riff or this beat, right? And then it generates and it mutates and it goes back and forth maybe between you and someone else. And then before you know it, there's a whole new being that's out there that's listenable and identifiable as a song. Yeah. And you're like, who was pulling this? Was I pulling on it? Was it pulling on me? Are we in this like tango together? And then all of a sudden it's over and it's completely evolved into this new thing by the end. Yeah. It's a wonderful mystery.
Yeah. I mean, how many times have you like recorded a practice or whatever, and you're like listening to yourself and your bandmates play the song the exact same way you always play it, and you're like, wait, what was that? And it's the same thing
more than I could tell you.
Yeah, when you go to record and you're like, and there's like a new idea that just came out of nowhere, or just like something you never noticed happening before that's all of a sudden happening, or like, any millions of different things that's just like, damn, I thought I knew everything about this by now, but that, that's just levels you back down to like, you're a participant, you're like, I don't know. You're an author. No, it's like
I wrote this, I constructed this, and yet it's teaching me about it. Like, how crazy is that?
Yeah, yeah.
I think I'm a nightmare for engineers sometimes, because I almost can't play the same thing the same way, take after take after take. It's gonna be in the ballpark of whatever it was, but then there's always gonna be some little nudging or accent or anticipation or something is just going to be mutated from time to time to time.
And is that something that they expect? Like they like, or like, I mean, you said I'm trying to figure out how to ask the question. Like, do engineers expect it to be exactly the same? Like for what purpose would that be completely necessary? Like,
I think I try to give them a heads up, like, hey, this is just kind of how I record. It's what gets the best ideas out of me. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be not a lot of editing or something like that, but there's usually some Franken takes happening.
Oh, okay.
Right?
So like, if you're like, we're going to splice this together, and they're like, this isn't close enough to the same thing. Is that the nightmare part, or?
It's just like, well, okay, do it again, and then adjust this, and be like, okay, and then like some new thing will reveal itself. I like to live presently with whatever I'm playing, and so that it tends to evoke a lot of improvisational type moments, and then sometimes it'll be we've played through all the takes or the punches or whatever. We put this thing together, and I'm like, okay, now we're gonna do just like have me listen to that, and then I'm gonna try and do that all at once, and like have that be a whole new version of whatever it is. Or
yeah.
There was a session I did where someone wasn't recording every single take that I did, and I said, I think we did like 10 or 12 or something like that, and I went back to listen, and they said, oh, I didn't record any of that. I was just kind of letting you go through it. And I was like, no, that's everything was in there.
Yeah. That's something similar happened to me once when I was like doing vocals on this thing, and then like it was me. I was the one recording, and it was recording, but like this like notice came up or something that I didn't see that was like, you only have like this much space left. And so
no.
like I did this whole section of this song, and I got to this part where I'm like really belting this one part off, and it just like stopped basically recording in the middle of this like part where I hit this note and carry it for a long time. And
oh, it's tragic.
I didn't know it stopped because I'm like on the other side of the I'm on the other side of the pop screen, and I'm just like going for it. I didn't know it stopped, and I stopped like where I was supposed to stop, and I was like, I literally do not know if I've ever felt that good about anything I've ever recorded. Like no take has ever been like, that was so fucking good. Like it felt so good in my body. And just, I was like, and I came back over it, and it was just like, I saw like just like the end of the wave was like a brick wall. And I was like, where did that stop? And it was like right in the middle of this thing. And I saved it, and I was like, well, I'm obviously going to have to do that part, like at least that part where that hits and that goes. It's not going to feel the same way because you can't, even if I did it just as well, it wouldn't feel that same way twice, right? But
exactly.
I was just like, okay, so I stopped and I saved it. And then I just like, I had to calm down because I was like upset, but I wasn't like mad even. I was just like, I felt sad, because I was like, damn.
It was almost like betrayal.
And I
like the
yeah,
machines, they've cursed me in this way.
And I went upstairs, and I didn't even get to tell my wife yet, like what happened, right? I went upstairs, and she was like, that was so good. And it like hurt worse because like, I don't expect anybody's listening. You know what I mean? Like, but she was just like, that was so good. And I was like, damn it.
Like, I don't even have the heart to tell you.
I'm like, well, I thought so too, but this is what happened, And then I gave myself some time, and I went back and I did it. And I every once in a while, I revisit that song in particular. It's a song that I wrote about one of my children, and I get to that part, and I'm like, you know what? This is really good, but like, I know in the back of my mind, I'm like, I know what was there. And
I saw the zenith.
Yeah,
I know
like
the true deep knowledge.
the third eye, opened up and all that.
Exactly.
But
Oh my God. I had a similar experience when we were recording A Highly Magnified History. I was recording the vocals with Ashley. We were in our rehearsal space. And so it was just the two of us. And he was living in New Jersey at the time. So I would only be able to get him for like 2 or 3 hours every other month. And so we recorded the title track and we put it away and we moved on to recording, many other things. And I think I was reviewing the files, or for some reason I was going through and going back to that song, and it was lost in a corrupted file.
Oh shit.
From when I backed it up. I fucked up the backup to another hard drive, and something got messed up in between, and it went to a different dimension and it was gone forever. So I, thank God, had a backup of all the instrumentals and everything else, but we had to completely redo his vocals. And I was like, oh man, it's going to put this whole record back another 4 months. And I'm going to make him redo an amazing performance again. I just felt horrible.
Yeah. Yeah. Similar things have happened when, I'll have several things going on at once, and there's only been one time that this happened. Luckily, even though I do work on multiple LPs at once or whatever. One
Hell
time
yeah.
I opened something up, and it's just there's just 4 files missing for some reason, out of however many bounce down tracks, however many tracks, 24 or something, and these 4 are just missing. And in this one particular instance, it was when I was working with someone else, and the person had sent me all kinds of sort of auxiliary sounds and stuff, and it was I thought at some point that I had lost this entire recording. So the fact that I had found it and opened it back up and there was 4 files missing was it was this isn't the worst thing that could have happened, right? Because you know what I mean? I thought it was just gone.
Totally.
I thought, so I opened it, and after speaking with the person and being do you have any of those files in case blah blah blah, and
Right.
He didn't have any of them,
Oh
which
my
is
God.
and so I opened this up and these 4 files are missing, and I'm basically listening to the song, and I'm well, everything that I recorded myself is there. The bass guitar that he did is there. Some of the other auxiliary stuff is there. And I'm so basically I don't know what's missing. So, and it's not available to me anymore anyway. So
It's it didn't exist.
yeah, I'm I'm going to just I'm going to do the best job I can with what's here. I was in the vocal stage, so I was still adding all kinds of stuff anyway. And
Yeah.
I was and hopefully he doesn't just go, the best thing I did was in that one song. Where is it?
Right, exactly.
And-
hey, at 59 seconds,
Yeah.
I'm expecting blah, 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 and it's
Yeah.
not there. And you're oh,
and the
please, no.
exactly. And I guess the silver lining of me not being able to find this in a while and finally finding it is perhaps if there was something that was really awesome there, he forgot about it too. Maybe that was,
I mean, he doesn't even have
Yeah.
the files.
Right.
There's
Well, that's
obviously a lack of investment there.
Yeah,
It's,
I mean,
it's
that's
craziness.
that's totally not on him in this case either, because this was one of
Okay.
these things. This was like literally a year later or something.
Okay,
So
okay,
yeah,
okay.
it's that's not usually that's not usually on that's not usually on me. Like like I almost never take that long to like finish something when I'm, but I've got two right now that I've been, like, I get to this point with certain things where I'm just holding them so precious,
Yeah.
and it's not helpful. Like, nothing turns out better, because I like agonized over it that much. Like, once you've spent a certain amount of time, I feel like that's it. If you haven't like had your best ideas yet, then like it's not that they're not coming, it's just that you didn't realize that like your ideas up to that point were fine. Like, I think that's the thing is
There's
like,
only so much fiddling that is
right,
going to get you
right.
good returns, the diminishing returns. It's
Yeah.
a
Cuz
classic.
I've literally like I've literally done an entire album like worth of vocals and lyrics. I've literally done the whole thing and then
Yeah.
been like no and started completely over and done it again. Like, I did that with our album Illivectus, and I'm like, I don't know if it was better for it or not. I don't know if it's
Wow.
just different, you know?
I mean, it's a bold like declaration
Yeah.
to the piece that no, I'm scrapping it all and we're doing it again.
I'm
It's
just like, and it's not even like, I don't even think it's like, I can't even be constructive like in the criticism of my own self either, because like I literally will just have like 3 months where I think that everything I make is really bad. So like it's not even, it's just like that I recorded those vocals at the wrong time, and like I didn't either push forward with them and just say, no, this is good, and just like
right.
leave it, or I didn't let them stay there long enough to where I'll come back later and have a different mindset that to where I can listen to them like
In a different state of
yeah,
mind.
yeah,
And,
like objectively. That's the word I'm looking
right,
for.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
I mean,
like,
it's really hard to separate yourself from what you're doing.
yeah. And yeah, I mean, and just like if, especially like if you struggle with things like imposter syndrome and stuff, and you just, I don't know, a lot of people I know are like that. It's just like a couple months or a month at a time. You're just like, okay, everything I make is trash. Why do I bother? And like,
No,
and
it's so. I think we all,
yeah,
anyone who is a creative, goes through this. I don't know anyone who doesn't. I think it just comes with the territory, and it's something you have to learn to wrestle with and harness and channel into something else, something
yeah,
positive.
yeah,
The fear should guide you in some way.
yeah,
You're like, my personal imposter syndrome is, for some reason, I send, if someone orders something, right? Like someone orders this record, I mail it out, and then I go and listen to it like right away. Like, I have to make sure it doesn't suck or something. Like, it's already done.
Stop the
I can't
presses.
change it.
Yeah.
Another one's gone out. Is it cool? Is it good? Right? It's okay. I think they'll like it. Okay.
Yeah. I don't. Yeah. I don't. I have a different thing that happens, right? Because I'm very wrapped up in like, I don't mix something like based on whether it sounds good or not. And I know that's like a hard thing to explain, right? But like, I don't mix something based on, like, I mix something based on like an idea in my brain of like what this should abstractly make someone feel like when they listen to it. And like, so if you hear something that I do and you're like, this sounds nasty, like it's supposed to make you feel
Raw.
nasty, Yeah,
Yeah.
and I have other things which are like, oh, this is, and I have like sort of, more or less, I have like a, with like my main, you know, band, like I more or less have like a not like a standard, as if like other things don't live up to this standard. It's not that, but I have like more or less like, this is what a Coma Regalia album is going to sound like now. It's going to be in this general production area zone ish, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But other things, I'm like, no, that guitar has got to sound like a power tool smashing the pavement outside. Like, that's what you're supposed to feel like when you hear that. And
That's
like,
awesome.
and it's just like, sometimes it's like, I listen to it later and I'm like, why did I do that? Like, like, why did I
It's
do
look,
that?
you're trying to evoke something
And
that's like visceral like that. You have to really go out on a limb, and it might work,
yeah,
it might
and
not, but you have to try.
I mean, it's like, is it fair to the other people that are collaborating with me? I'm not sure, but like, usually people just hear it and go, "That's sick," and so I'm like, "Cool, I'm glad you like it," because I don't want you to not like it, but like, when I'm over here, like, I'm airing my grievances in the mix down, I'm like, you know, I'm like, I'm really mad. Like, that guitar's got to sound awful, you know, um, you know, or like, this snare has got to be obnoxious, you know, like,
Yes, absolutely. Well, I mean,
and
going with the feeling, I think, again, should be this signpost guide to whatever you're ultimately trying to achieve. You know, everything has to be in service of whatever the ultimate emotional outcome is in whatever you're making. So if things sound super clean and punchy and warm and all other buzz words, but they don't get you to the place where you're supposed to be getting, then you have to start over
yeah,
and try
yeah,
another way to get them there.
yeah, for sure. I mean, I've done like, I've done entire recordings like where, you know, we, in the past, you know, we'd go somewhere and we'd pay a bunch of money and get a recording, and when we get home and you're just like, this is the songs, they're played well,
Right.
like, we've recorded there before, but this time it just didn't work. Like,
Right.
why is
The
that? And
mojo wasn't there.
yeah, and so, I mean, you know, if it's just like, yeah, if you're not getting there, you're not getting there. But I mean, I don't know. I think there's something to be said for just like, uh, for better or worse, like following like your, like following your intentions, like in the heat of the moment or whatever, and letting that, if nothing else, like letting that be a timestamp on that part of your life, you know, and just like, you know, you don't forget, if you did 7 albums that all sounded the same way, like, they might you might be like, what was going on right there at that time when I was doing that, and like, in this other instance that I'm describing, like, I don't have that issue, you know. Like, I don't have to think. I know exactly like what was on my mind when I mixed this record, or when I was, you know, doing that or doing the other thing, you know. So
Absolutely.
it's
Yeah, it's important that these things have a capsule quality to them, I think. I completely agree with you about that. There's you can't control any other time except the one you're in. So you have to accept the present, and live fully in it.
yeah,
And if you can do that while you're also creating things, especially, and all the other people you're with are also participating in that, like, severe being present in the moment, you're going to make something very special. I think a lot
Yeah.
of the most important records are capturing that spirit where everyone is firing on all cylinders, just being right here, right now. And that's everything.
Yeah.
And
The kids call that being locked in.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they're right.
Yeah. No, they are. And they
like
always are, to be honest. But
true.
yeah.
True. They speak this truth right through you, and you're like, could you just the arrow, man? I could see where it went. It went through me. I could see it against the back wall. That hurts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Yeah. And I feel like also it's just like, I feel like that just connects you to a recording in a way that like you just don't get by just going there and playing your instrument really well,
Exactly.
It's like when something else is like sort of guiding you, or a certain kinetic emotion is bonding the group in a way, that like is different than just like the physical element of like playing the songs well, like there's something else that happens there as well.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so you more or less started Detach the Islands like by yourself in 2018?
I definitely started it by myself, and in 2016
Okay. So first release 2018, so 2016 we're birthing the idea, we're making demos and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm making it all in Reason, just alone, just kind of like, I want to do a heavy band or a punk band, and I want to try and do what I think that should sound like. I'm not really hearing what I really want, and I want to find a way to express that. And so I started putting demos together and writing full songs and like feeling comfortable expanding into that role of like helming a ship. I'd never done that or had the opportunity to do that, and I gave myself that mountain to climb. And then I started showing it to friends, and they're like, "This, I don't know what this is, but keep going."
Yeah.
That was kind of all the encouragement I needed. And then I had a couple of people who believed in it and were like, "We should play this and we should do this." And I said, holy shit, someone's trusting me, and they're gonna learn this wacko stuff I'm putting together. Like, I have to seize upon this and like try it, because there's like a compulsion, and it's doing something to other people who I trust.
Yeah.
And I was just like, from the beginning, felt so blessed and lucky that people even wanted to take the ideas that I had in my head and make them real.
You said you were doing this in Reason. I'm not familiar with that program now. Is that like a writing software? Like, were you doing like essentially like, were you programming the guitars and then someone? Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's another DAW, and it started out as just MIDI. For a long time it was only MIDI and like native software, so it was like you can only use their instruments and their blah blah blah, and then they've since kind of expanded and you can put audio in and everything, and so now it's kind of a mix of like Reason and Ableton that I make my demos in. Okay. And yes, but I was making everything in MIDI, even the guitars, bass, drums, all of it, like as fully composed and fleshed out as I could possibly imagine. Drum fills included, like the whole nine. Mm-hmm. And then I would take that and go into Sibelius and make charts for the guitar players and the bass player. And so I give that to Jay, Sadhu, and Eric and say, all right, this is the song. Learn it and then come back to me. Or we would sit down and go through the charts together.
So like sheet music, essentially.
Sheet music,
yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And I for lack of a better word, recruited all three of those guys, not only because they're amazing people and they're great friends, but I knew that they could handle it. I knew that they could do that specific way of learning things and be capable of the music and be into that. We're all into like the same kinds of stuff, and like the way they played, I knew could bring it to life in a way that I couldn't. Certainly not a MIDI program could. So that's how the writing process goes. MIDI, sheet music, like toiling back and forth with the quote unquote the orchestra, and then putting it all together.
I mean, first of all, I couldn't play that shit. Second of all, I could, if you put some sheet music in front of me, I have no idea what I'm looking at. I'm like, two teaspoons of powdered sugar. What is this right here? But yeah, it's yeah, I'm like, I'm making you like some kind of cheesecake and not playing guitar parts. But yeah, I was gonna ask, because you have like on the first demo you have like someone named Dylan Kelly that did vocals, and then later Dylan is credited with like some writing, and I was just like, I'm not sure what any of this means, like, and now I have the context for it. I see what that means. So it's just like, you were bouncing these ideas around, and then like, you and Dylan, perhaps were just like, oh, what if we change this, or what if we add this, or whatever. So that's how some of that worked initially.
It was even less democratic than that, honestly. Okay. So Dan Kelly is the original
I'm sorry.
vocalist. Oh no, totally okay.
I even wrote down the wrong name. I'm sorry, Dan.
Dan, wherever you are, we got you, bud.
That's on me.
It's all good.
Like I said, I was doing mail order earlier. I wrote down so many names, so
you're just awash.
Yeah, I'm burned for the day.
No, it's okay. No, not to worry. What was I gonna say? Right. So Dan and Tom, who are both not in the band anymore, they are the original vocalist and bass player. And then Jay Kohler has stayed on from that original iteration on guitar. But yeah, I mean, I was like dictating these things to these guys basically, and a lot of the rehearsal was them going, so how does it go? What is it? And I'm writing far beyond what I can physically play on any of these instruments. Like, I can barely play guitar. I can kind of almost play bass. So I'm really asking a lot of other people to not only learn something that is difficult, but something I can't really articulate to them.
Yeah.
I can play it back to them as a recording, and I can show it to them visually. But I can't play it and then have them parrot it back to me.
Right.
So a lot of the process is, not only I'm writing all this stuff, but I'm trying to immerse myself in it so deeply and listen to it so much that I can recall when things are right and wrong just by hearing someone play it once or twice, and be able to articulate what's right and wrong when the full band is playing. So be able to pick out, like, in section C, that chord is just like a half step off. So let's just like clean that up and we'll move on. Or like that rhythm, the 16th notes actually go like this or that. So it gets that minute, especially in the beginning. And then this time around, for a highly magnified history, because the way that we recorded everything, we didn't play any of it as a group before the record was done.
That's wild.
It's an insane proposition to say, all right, this music, we're never going to hear it all together. We're never going to play it all together. We're going to assemble it piece by piece and just kind of trust that it works. And there was more collaboration because things wouldn't work. Most of it would work, right? So like we'd be trudging along in the song and like getting through the recording part by part, and we're like feeling good, and it's like, oh, this is working, this is so cool, it's like coming to life. And then there'd be a part where especially Jay and Sidhu would turn to me and go, so I can't make my hand go like that.
It just doesn't work. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I can't retune, or like whatever I got to do. This part's not going to gel with everything else.
This is not a swivel right here. This
exactly.
Is, a fixed joint. Yeah.
So that, writing in the abstract for an instrument that I don't really play at all rears its head time to time. So we have to troubleshoot it and go, okay, what do we have to sacrifice about this part? Or like, how do we re-engineer it to work so that it works with everything else that works? Or do we need to take everything else that works and make it about serving this thing that's not working right now, and then retune for the songs, or, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Sidhu, for the first album, he has a different tuning for almost every single song. And like, as it's kind of crazy, as the record goes along, he starts in standard and ends in C sharp standard. And just like the guitar gets lower and lower and lower as A Burden to Become Fact goes. And then this time around, it wasn't so much about that, but it would be like, all right, this chord is too big. It's too much happening, so we're going to split it into two things. And there's a couple parts in a few of the songs where you can hear like a third guitar appear. And that's how that happened.
Yeah. I was thinking that's really wild, but then I'm like, there's like a lot of like, we will record an album like over the summer, and it's like the drummer will fly here, and we've never played the songs before. Like, right. I just sent him demos, and then I literally like hit record, and we like, he's playing the songs better than me at this point, because like I wrote all these songs like a couple months before he got here, and was like so stressed about getting them to him in time, etc., that I haven't listened to them since, right?
Right. You're like, so, I just need to put this down. I've been so close to this, please.
And so he shows up, and I'm like, oh yeah, I kind of remember how to play this. And like the scratch guitars like that are on these drum tracks, like, I mean, they're not on the drum tracks, right? But the scratch guitars on these albums, I'm like, what an amazing player Jason is, that like you played what you were supposed to play while I am just murdering this song. Like, I am just like, oh, what's the next part? And my like I can hear the gears in my brain turning like through these guitar parts while I'm moving from one part to the next. And he doesn't miss a beat. He's like bam, 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 and I'm like, yeah. And then we make a whole album out of it. Like, obviously I do learn the songs, and then I record them, hopefully well, usually well. And then it's like, we have so much material behind us because we've been a band since 2010. So like, it's like, how long is our set supposed to be? 20 minutes? Okay. Like,
yeah, what era are we gonna pull from to make this?
So it's like, we're gonna play one song off this album that's like, depending on the album, like the album could be like 40 minutes or it could be 20 minutes, but we're going to
Right.
play one song from it. Like, it's like, okay, never going to play these, never going to play like 9 out of 10 of these songs again. Never really actually played them even once, like the
Right,
whole
they've
thing,
been
like,
assembled and
yeah,
replicated, but
like,
they haven't been like rehearsed in the way that you would
right.
rehearse for like a tour or something.
Exactly, like the bass player will record them from either New Jersey or Chicago, depending on which bass player we ask. Um, I've never sang the lyrics like while the drums and the guitars were playing like out loud in
Wow.
the room, et cetera, et cetera. But you know, that one song that we do get to play out of, like now at this
This
point,
batch.
yeah, at this point we have like we're doing our ninth LP this year. So at this point we sort of like are just like, well, we can pick one song per album and then like a couple more songs, and that's 20 minutes.
Right.
And
Right. And you
so
drill that one in
that
like
one, I'm
into
like, that's got to be the one that I'm going to lose my shit like while we do this, that's got to be the one. But yeah, it's I don't know. I think that we're really like at such a remarkable point in history where we can do all of this the way that we do it. Like it's wild.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's
And
unbelievable.
it's just really like not just like it's not just like a such a fertile ground for like creative ideas, but it's just like it makes it possible in a way that like this obviously wasn't possible until the last 10 years or so. It's just wild. It's fun. It's awesome.
I don't know what other decades Detach the Islands could even exist in.
Yeah,
I,
like if
I guess
you,
one where I practice guitar a lot more, but it's
yeah,
neither here.
and it's
you
like
know?
if an album took you this long, like X amount of time, the way that you're doing it now, like how long would this have taken? Like otherwise, you know what I mean? Like it's mind-boggling. It's like,
Meshuggah was really inspiring to me because this is a very similar process that they have.
oh really? That makes
Yeah.
sense.
They're writing a lot of the stuff on laptops and either passing it back and forth to each other, or someone will present a song and the band goes, sounds great, and they'll just learn it as is, and then that's the track.
Yeah.
And it comes together as it gets recorded. And if anything has to change, that's how it changes. But
Because
I
that
think
shit's so
learning about
cerebral too.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So like that's almost as like we don't even have to have the sounds in our head. We got the idea in our head, like, and the sounds are gonna come, and then the song is gonna come, and it's like
That's pretty much the process. Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you for putting it just like in order like that.
Yeah, I don't.
That's it.
I have like like a cave dwelling person like version of that occasionally, where it's just like it's like, oh, the boom da ba, like that's gonna be like this, and I'm gonna take the end of this, yeah, I'm gonna take the end of the song and I'm gonna do one of these like stop, fake stop, this stop, that stop, like I was like a Dr. Seuss version of knowing what actual like 7/8 and whatever these different time signatures, et cetera mean. This is just a
Totally.
Jason is the one that knows that, and Jason will be like, oh yeah, that's like this, that's wild, how'd you think of that? And I'm like, I didn't think,
like, how did I think of that?
I didn't think of that the way that you just said it. That's not the way I did it, but I'm glad. Like, we just did a show over the summer where
Rad.
we had a substitute drummer, like our friend Will came and played with us, and Will was like, oh, this is like 5/6 or whatever. And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And
You're like, great, glad you figured it
yeah,
out.
and
You cracked the code.
he was like, that's awesome. And I was like, and he was like, but it's really weird. Like, is it okay if I just not do that? And I was like, you know what? I like didn't even know what was happening. Like,
You
so
could have fooled me.
yeah, just do what you,
That's so
you know?
funny.
Because there was like, it was this thing, there was like, I don't know. Like, I know the song, I know which song it is, but it's like, there's like an alternating rhythm. Like,
Right.
and Will had it. Will knew what was up. Will, but I'm like, I don't know. I just wrote the song,
I'm just feeling that.
Yeah. And,
I mean, ultimately, that is, I think, the most important thing. We were talking before about recording and letting the feeling or the emotion that you're trying to evoke be what guides you. I think that has to be the same thing with the songwriting. Despite all the intellectualization and written precision in the music, it still has to ultimately serve an emotional purpose. It can't just be an exercise.
Yeah.
And people, especially the people playing it, like, have to be able to connect to it in a real visceral way.
Yeah.
And I think if I can achieve that, then the music has succeeded.
Yeah.
And if I can't, then the music has failed, despite whatever the effort is that I've put into it to have all these like swirling things going on, or like ridiculously complicated chord progressions or whatever it is. Like,
yeah,
all that has to be in service of the emotional goal.
Right. This is like, I used the word demystify earlier, and it's like you have these big ideas, and then it's like when you're doing the technical part, it's like you have to remystify it, because like,
right,
you're like,
right,
we're okay, we're good on the one stage, now we got to get the other thing happening, and
exactly. Yeah, we have to be able to show this to people and have them not think about that. Okay, you're playing in this time signature,
yeah,
while I'm playing in this one, while you're playing in a different key, and it's all just kind of swirling around. And if that doesn't still make you mosh, then what's the point?
Yeah, it can't be the whole thing. There's got to be, the other thing, the other part that gets you hooked, that makes you feel connected to the song. Not just like, not just as an observer, though. That's that is a thing that can happen, where you're listening to the song more objectively, and you're like, oh shit, like, that's really cool what they're doing there,
Right.
The other thing has to happen too, as well, or like, once you got that initial thing out of it, you wouldn't come back to it necessarily. Maybe you would, or maybe you wouldn't, but that other thing, that's what makes people come back.
Right. You're so much more likely to return to something that has like touched your heart than has just touched your mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think you were talking about analyzing the music and have it be, like a cerebral thing. With Meshuggah, they're playing in overlapping time and like all these absurd rhythmic gymnastics, but people are still bobbing their heads and they're grooving along. And like, again, that was an inspirational thing to me. Them and Dillinger Escape Plan is my favorite band. And that ethos of like being a psycho punk rock band still pervades their music to me, even though it is psycho music, like objectively, cerebrally nuts stuff.
I saw them in like 1999 or whatever, like right after Calculating Infinity came out, and like,
that's badass.
The vocalist like more or less just stood at the microphone, but at the same time, like, I feel like I've rarely been so terrified of a person. Like, he just commanded the entire stage when he was up there, and I just was like, I already loved the album. I had the album, I went and saw them, but like, I just was like, transfixed on this person. I was just like, what? And it was like the other two, the guitar players and stuff, look like they're trying to pop out of straitjackets over there, like while they're playing.
Yes,
But I'm just
their
like, I
guitars
don't
are
care.
snakes.
I'm like, look at this Frankenstein, like this huge, imposing figure up there that's like commanding the audience. And yeah, I don't
Dimitri's
know,
a big dude. I think he's like taller than me. I'm 6'2". I think he's taller than me.
it was just it was just a wild. It was like such a great show, and just like a wild, and like
That's awesome.
they got so much more like musically like out there after that release and stuff. So like I don't even know what it would have been like to see them after that, and with like different vocalists and stuff. It was probably such a different experience, you know. But I'm really stoked that I got to see them when I did, of course.
Where was that show?
It was in
that in
Indianapolis.
Indiana?
I believe it was at the Emerson Theater in
Wow,
Indianapolis.
that's so
Yeah.
awesome. Anyone
Yeah.
who's ever seen Dillinger, I'm like, that's the coolest shit ever.
Yeah.
Whoa.
It was you know, they weren't that big then. It was not a like the Emerson's kind of big. I don't know what their capacity would be like, but it's like, let's just say it's 500, then there were like 300 people there, you know, which is
Right.
that's nothing to like scoff at, you know. I didn't mean to imply that, but like,
Oh no. I
just
mean, especially for
them,
the time.
yeah, for them, it was nowhere near what they were going to be playing to, obviously, you know,
And just
later.
I it still baffles me that they had like no business being as popular as they were. It just, if you think about what the music is, if you
Yeah,
think about what
it's
they were
something.
trying to achieve, they're like, how did this connect to anybody?
Yeah.
But it did. They
Yeah.
managed to punch through, like, yeah, our guitars are going to harmonize in minor seconds in like crazy times, and our drummer is going to invent a new kind of blast beat that basically he did until recently. Like, you don't push music that hard and have people respond to it that equally as hard. That's like once in a blue moon, once in a generation type experience with a band.
And I mean, there's people like me too who it's like, I can play guitar. Like, I can't play guitar like them. I can play drums. I obviously can't play guitar like them, drums like them. But it's like, I don't even know, like, as much as I can listen to like pretty much whatever and start playing along with, like, you know, to a degree with like pretty much whatever. Like, I obviously couldn't play what they're playing like as fast as they're playing, et cetera, et cetera. But I could get there to a degree, right? But I don't even
Absolutely.
know like what you're talking about right now. Like, I have no idea, you know? And it's just like, that's the thing, right? Is like, that's how you can tell it was working, you know? Because
Exactly.
it didn't even dawn, and it doesn't dawn on most people, you know, that's what's happening. It's just, something magical was happening, and it captivated people. It captivated a lot of people, you know?
Right. If the goal you're trying to achieve requires that kind of technical equipment, then great. But the equipment has to serve the goal. You know,
Yeah.
I think this is maybe the moral of this conversation. Like,
Yeah.
whatever you're using, whatever tools you've got, you know, paints your palette is made of, like, they all have to be in service of whatever piece you're trying to create.
Right.
And like whatever you're trying to pull out of the ether or yourself or wherever.
Yeah. And the other side of that, of course, is that we don't know how much that was reworked before we hear what we hear. Like, we're getting the highlight reel, you know?
Right.
Like,
I mean, what's just about Calculating Infinity for a second, like, what blows my mind about that record is that it's all to tape. So we're hearing basically full takes of those instruments, especially the drums. Like, to hear Chris Penny be so berserkly accurate and like consistent with velocity, it just is like a masterclass of playing. And Ben's and Brian's guitar playing also is like, it's dizzying.
Yeah.
dizzying. Even now, you know, we're talking about this 25, 26 years after the fact, and we're still like, isn't this the craziest shit we've ever heard? Oh, like, it's so insanely
Yeah.
timeless, you know?
But yeah, you know, stepping back to, you know, Detach the Islands.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
mean, you more or less started releasing things in 2018, and
Exactly.
you sort of had like, you know, something to show folks every couple years, and then a highly magnified history came out this July. Um, that now, like, there's always like the part of the show where I need to start wrapping things up, and there's always the sort of like compulsion to be like, well, so what's next? And like you're, you know, as an artist, it's always like I'm always like, here's the part where I'm an asshole, and I ask like, what's next? Because, you know, clearly, and we're talking about your process and the process with the rest of the band and everything. Clearly, this album was a long time in the making, and it was a lot of work. And so it's like, what do you mean, what's next? Like, leave me alone for a year, you know? Um, but I mean, are you all trying to play on the record? Are you already back in the writing stage? Like, just is that how you keep your gears turning? Like, what is in store for the band over the next year or so?
So thank you for asking. Yeah. So yes and yes to your questions.
Okay.
We were finally able to play on the album in October. We had our release show in Brooklyn,
Okay.
and that was our first show in 3 years. We had a show in 2022 where we played a couple of the new songs because the record was already basically done instrumentally. So and Ashley had recorded some of the vocals. So we were like, okay, we've got a couple of new ones. Let's inject those and just kind of see how they play, see what happens, because we don't know what it's like to play the songs. Nobody does. So that was amazing. And then it took 3 more years to play another show, or 2.5. And just that show, like, we didn't have a full band rehearsal until the day of the show. It was an insane leap of faith that even happened. Because Sadhu was living in Washington, D.C., and Eric was living up by Albany. So to get everybody together, I was only able to have 3 or ish people at each rehearsal. So everyone kind of heard everything piecemeal, and then we finally were all able to put it together. But this year I would love to play at least a couple shows. You know, I would love to play some fests and play out of town, because we've never played outside of the East Coast. You know, we've played Pennsylvania a handful of times, and that's it. Otherwise, we've only played in New York, which further blows my mind that people are ordering tapes or our like Death Grips cover vinyl from far away places in the States or overseas or whatever. I just like, it's hard. It's amazing to me. We've never played for these people. We've never met them. And yet they have our music, and we're like connected to them in that way. But, and yeah, I'm more inspired to write now that the record is out there, and it's like, okay, we have a full band again. Everyone is like, we've played a show, the record is out there, people are liking it, you know, the however many of them there are, but there's a positive feedback and everyone's excited. And it's like, all right, we've now learned all the material more or less. We like can play it. It works live. Now we want to like do it more. So, you know, you finally push this thing out there, and I don't want to just move on from it. I want to play more shows. So I hope we play at least 1, 2, 10. I don't know, whatever we can. And then like I was just saying, now that I'm not thinking about releasing the record as much, in a large part thanks to Tomb Tree. Like, I just want to shout out Tomb Tree and Dave over there at in Canada for helping us out with this. That's like such a huge reason why the record is even able to be out, because they helped with putting the tape out and like putting it together and making all the variants and just doing all this amazing stuff. Dave is amazing, and I'm so grateful to him for helping us with this.
Absolutely.
But yeah, anyway, now that all that CPU is free, I can like let new ideas in and work on them. And I mean, I started writing songs for this record before the other record was even done. So some of the songs that are on A Highly Magnified History are older than The Burden to Become Fact.
Wow.
And I think we would have done more and played more if it wasn't for COVID, if it wasn't for everyone being far away from each other. You know, just like the process of making the darn thing took years just to finish it, let alone have it be in the world and be playing it. It's like it needed to be done before we could all come together again. And now that that process is over, ready for the next step in the process of like being a band and like doing things that a full group of people do.
And that was my conversation with Emmett Ceglia. Thank you so much, Emmett, for taking the time to chat with me. I had a really nice time. Thanks to all of y'all for listening wherever you are as well. Don't forget to rate and review us on whatever your favorite device or service is. Until next time, take care and do good things.